And away we go. Welcome to Three Guys in an iPad, the proverbial Zoom-enabled water cooler, or maybe it's house party, of the mortgage and real estate industry. I'm Brian Rieger. I'm one of those three guys. I'm also the principal of True Impact Communications and the co-founder of Content Beacon. And naturally, it wouldn't be three guys without my two compatriots. Let's start with Rick Grant of RGAPR and co-founder at Content Beacon. Rick, how are you today, sir? Week what? Week 5 of the COVID quarantine?
At least. It feels like 25, but we're all healthy. We're all good.
Exactly. It feels like it's March 87th at this point. And Kevin Breeland is our third guy today. He is a certified mortgage banker, and he is with Amplify Credit Union in Austin. And speaking of Austin and Kevin, how are you today, Kevin?
Doing great. Thank you for asking, Brian. For those of you who don't know, I have a background of Austin, Texas, and that's just to really point out to all of you how jealous you should be about not living here.
I almost thought you were on a boat there for a second. Are you right on the lake there, it looks like, or just beyond it here?
This is actually a backdrop of downtown and Lady Bird Lake, which is in downtown Austin. So if you'd ever been to Austin, like when you came down for Respro when it was in Austin, you were 4 blocks from this.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, always a pleasure to have you with us. And this is the part of the show where I make my shameless plug for Content Beacon. That's the industry's only B2B content marketing agency. So if you're thinking about doing a podcast, blogging, any kinds of content out there, give Rick or I a shout. I also want to make a special thanks this week. We're starting to get more guest offers. We're having folks reach out to us, have folks send along ideas. Keep them coming, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. If you have an idea and you'd like to share it, or you know someone who needs to be on this podcast with us, contact us. Again, it's Brian at Content Beacon or Rick at Content Beacon, and that, again, will be in the show notes. So without further ado, Kevin Breeland would like to know if we're kidding him.
Thank you, Brian. So as you recall, I gave you and Rick some homework for the segment of Are You Kidding Me today? And so for our audience, I will recap the question that I sent you. And this week's question is actually a question within a question. Who makes $8.857 million a year and just now has their own email account using Facebook and other technologies? Finally, the question within the question is, who is the other person in this profession that has an annual income higher at $9.15 million? I turn it over to you.
Well, Rick's always prepared better than I. So Rick, I'll let you take the first stab at that.
Well, I can tell you how many millionaires we have in the U.S., and I can tell you how many people have email addresses in the U.S., but I cannot tell you who Kevin's talking about. Kevin, who are you talking about?
So one of the things that all of you should understand, since you live in the frozen north, is that in the sunny south, football is king. Above everything, football is king. It always has been. It always will be. That's just the way it is. So this person who just now got their own email account is our own Nick Saban, head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And as with most articles about Nick Saban, they just go over the top and they move on to the next thing. But we, three guys in an iPad, always like to the next question. So I was curious as to why he never had email to begin with. So I guess everybody just walked over to his office, said, "Hey, coach, this is what I think." He would brush it off, send him out of his office, and the ivory tower would continue like it was. Since he's winning national championships, nobody's going to tell him what to do. But this year was the first year Alabama didn't make the Final Four. So apparently they decided the problem was email. So now he has email. But the other side of this question who's the other person in this profession who makes more than Nick Saban? So Nick Saban makes $8.57 million per year. A lot of money to be a football coach.
Kevin, I'm going to jump in and quibble with you for a second. As a graduate of the Ohio State University, and I'll mention that Rick's in Madison, which is not too far from the University of Wisconsin, so we would quibble a little on that football. Problem is that we don't use email up here. Apparently we use Twitter as college coaches. So I just wanted to jump in, but go ahead.
Well, your guy makes $4.35 million. So, whenever y'all decide to open up the checkbook and really start pouring out some cash, then you'll start winning national championship after national championship after national.
Well, we got to save some money for the players, Kevin. Come on.
Well, I understood. But the only other coach in college football who makes more money than Nick Saban is Dabo Swinney.
Dabo Swinney. Okay.
He just got a new contract. Now pays him $9.315 million per year as a $50 million buyout. So $50 million is guaranteed no matter what he does. He could turn Clemson into an 0-20 team next year, and he's going to get $50 million regardless. So that's the question within the question.
Outstanding.
Some other things that came to light, and this one actually came to light today. And so you guys didn't get the opportunity to really review this much, but keeping with the sports theme, ESPN has hit on hard times. The worldwide leader in sports. Who would have thought? But since there's no sports being played, nobody's working out, we might be able to go back to some video of Terrell Owens working out in the driveway, but that's about all we would have for sports. So they have asked their highest paid commentators to take a 15% pay cut in order to, stay relevant. So my question to you guys is, how many employers would ask you to take a pay cut, and then whenever this is passed, give it back to you?
Maybe the 4-letter network?
I don't know. But when you read about all the different medias, print and television, asking their people to take 10, 15, Hollywood Reporter, Sports Illustrated asked their employees to take a 30% pay cut. My question is when everything returns to whatever the new normal is, how many of them are going to step up and give the money back?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Great question.
So that's going to be something to follow up on.
Absolutely, Kevin.
Yes.
Well, you'll be our man on that one. Let us know.
All right. And other than that, I could bore you with lots of Wheel of Fortune and things like that. As we are in shelter in place, we're really digging to the hot topics of today. But I will tell you, where Wheel of Fortune is concerned, almost every day now I get some feed about what happened with the contestant the night before. So they gave away a lot of money and prizes last week. They gave a lot of money and prizes away last night. So, but they're all reruns. So it just looks like they did it in order. Other than that, that's all I got. Back to you.
So Kevin, do a lot of folks in Austin watch Wheel of Fortune?
I don't know. But I know this fat old guy does, because, when I go from my dining room office to my living room couch, which is all of, 12 feet. That's the next thing on the agenda. Because I will say, I do keep the TV on all day in the living room, but there's no volume. And so that's so I can hear my dog snore. And these are all critical things to working from home. And, Austin and Travis County yesterday extended the shelter in place to May 8th. It's not necessarily because they think the pandemic is worse, although the numbers show it's getting worse in the city and county. It's because the current shelter in place expired last night at midnight. So they had to do something. So we're here now till May 8th. And so that will give me plenty of time to find more backgrounds to have in the background, more different costumes to put on. Maybe I'll have the dog on one time, because he's feeling a little left out. But it also, all kidding aside, really, it does give you time to do some of the little things that you don't do during the day. And I always try to set aside some time. I used to do it at my lunch hour to read through today's information, what's going on. More so just to kind of educate myself, because all of us live in a cocoon, whether we believe we do or not. We all live in a cocoon, and what's going on in our world is what's going on, and we don't really see past that. So unless you take time out of your day every day to sit and pull up various news sources or whatever and just kind of read what's happening, you wouldn't know. So I have a little bit more time for that, so that's what I'm doing, and I'm able to uncover these in-depth questions that we now have.
And Kevin, as always, delightful and amazing. Thank you, Kevin Breeland. We're going to take a little bit of a hard right turn now, and we're going to go to this week's mortgage headline roundup. And there's been a particular headline that's been popping up pretty frequently here in early April. And I'd have to say we can't really help but follow up on the burgeoning servicer liquidity story. In happier times, I'd probably say we'd be getting the popcorn out for this, but this is a pretty hefty philosophical tug of war. And as a practical matter, there are jobs, livelihoods, businesses, maybe even an entire economic sector, depending on the outcome of the discussion. So we're going to attack that now. And I want to point out that there's a lot of good reporting on this out there right now, including interviews and bylines with, of course, David Stevens. The MBA, the Mortgage Bankers Association, has been very vocal on the issue. In our last podcast, we heard from Christopher Whalen. So a lot of pretty big thinkers out there weighing in on the issue. We settled on a headline from Housing Wire, particularly an interview with Mr. Calabria, and that headline is, of course, Calabria, no servicer liquidity facility coming, but GSEs may pull servicing from struggling companies. This is out of Housing Wire on April 7th from our friend Ben Lane. If you have a chance, check it out. And again, we've had other great stories, National Mortgage News, MBA Newslink, a lot of other folks reporting on this. It's a big story. And I'll summarize it briefly, and then I want to kind of turn it over to the peanut gallery. Now, in this story, we hear some echoes of the Christopher Whalen article we read last week. And David Stevens and the mortgage bankers especially are making strong cases for some kind of liquidity facility or other backstop for servicers in the path of, what some are now facetiously calling a mortgage holiday. The fact of the matter is the number of forbearance requests out there on mortgages has skyrocketed in the last several weeks with the economy virtually shut down. FHFA Director Mark Calabria has also made the rounds. He's chided those using such terminology as mortgage holiday, and he's so far stood pretty firm against any kind of a bailout or any kind of liquid injection for these servicers. So when Housing Wire asked him whether the FHFA, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have plans to address the concerns being raised along those lines, he said that they have a plan, but it's not the one the industry is calling for. And I think he specifically said yes and no is the answer. So instead of setting up a liquidity facility, Calabria said that the GSEs may transfer servicing away from companies that are struggling to deal with the advances. And I'm quoting now from Mr. Calabria, the yes is we continue to monitor Fannie and Freddie servicers. We are at this point comfortable with our ability to deal with any servicers that may be distressed so that we can either turn them into sub-servicers or transfer their servicing to other parties. And we believe at this point, given the number of uptake of forbearance, We've seen that we can transfer servicing in a way that's not too disruptive, end quote. All right, I'm sure both of you have seen variations of this story quite a bit here in early April, but I'm going to throw it now to the peanut gallery, and let's go ahead and get a look at that peanut gallery. First question for you, gentlemen. Where does this story end? What's the ending to it? We've already seen several U.S. senators step forward, and now some rumbles from the Republican Party speaking up for additional support for the servicers. Can Calabria and the FHFA hold the line on their current stand? How does this turn out?
Well, I'll tell you this is an evolving story, Brian. And the first thing that hits me right in the head from the beginning is the old line, we're from the government and we're here to help. One of the things that rang so true out of what Dave Stevens wrote earlier this week was that, we understand that the government has to act like they're trying to help their constituents, but you can't just go in and say everyone can have a mortgage holiday regardless of need or situation. It just was ridiculous. On the other hand, I've said this many times, I'll say it again, I don't understand why U.S. government agencies don't hire PR professionals. It just burns me. Those statements Calabria made about, well, if they can't handle it, we'll just find somebody who can. That is just the exact opposite of what you want your executive to say. Now, he made those statements when the total forbearance for Fannie and Freddie was at less than 2% of their portfolio. So at the time, it looked like this is not a big issue. If they can't handle a couple of percent, then they don't need to be in this business. I get that. But we don't let him say that, right? You don't say that. You say, we've got this handled. It's going to be fine. And even though I'm probably the anti-alarmist of the group, we're already seeing a lot of people talking about this issue. I fully expect that there will be all kinds of vehicles made available to servicers. Everybody knows we can't lose the servicing industry. We're not going to lose the servicing industry. It's just a matter of how we're going to afford that and how the director is going to come out after all the dust settles and this is done, and somebody finally gets to sit down with him and ask him who's preparing his statements.
Rick, stay there a second. And Kevin, I'm going to come back to you in a moment on something here, but you brought up a couple of interesting points about leadership there. And of course, as PR guys, you and I especially, part of our job with our clients is to, put our leaders in the best position to shine. Now let's take a contrast there, or maybe it's not, but it seems to me Ginnie Mae has, if nothing else, made some symbols, made some signals is the word I'm looking for, easy for me to say, has made some signals and some moves to show support, at least for the VA and FHA loans. Do you think maybe I'm reading too much into that, or do you think Ginnie's done a nice job of doing what it can to step up here?
So far, I'm impressed with what I've seen out of that group, and I'm still monitoring it, and we'll watch to see how they do. Admittedly, their portfolio of those loans is significantly smaller, I think, than what Fannie and Freddie is dealing with, and so the issue on their side may not be nearly as severe right now, but the leadership they've shown has nothing to do with that, right? That's great. So we want to see that kind of thing with the other agencies as well, and if we do, and when we do, I think we're going to be fine.
Now, Mr. Breeland, I've got one for you, sir. Is this truly, it sounds like Director Calabria is making this almost a wait-and-see situation. And maybe I'm misreading that, but it seems that way to me, at least in the nature of his comments. Now, can the FHFA or other forms of government backstop or the agencies, can they just jump in and save the servicers if they get overwhelmed? Or is there a point of no return? Is there a point where even the government can't help them?
Well, I think there's always a point of no return. And if FHFA has a plan in place, maybe they're only sharing it with the servicers and they're not sharing it publicly because they don't want to have a mad rush to people not making their mortgage payment, thereby compounding the problem even more. But what got me with his response was the absolute, we don't have a problem here, or there's nothing to see here. And, and we have plenty of big banks who can take over some of these servicing portfolios if that needs to be done. What concerns me with that kind of attitude is, let's keep in mind that the non-bank lenders, just like the bank lenders that are Fannie and Freddie servicer, were approved by Fannie and Freddie. So at one time, these people did have the financial wherewithal that they believed was strong enough to make them servicer quality. And you know as well as I do, especially you two guys working with all the different companies you work with, a lot of these non-bank lenders got into servicing to not only help protect their customer base, because sub-servicers or correspondent lenders were going after their customers the minute the rates dropped. But on top of that, it creates a stream of revenue. You know, it allows a small regional lender to become more relevant in their region. They hire more people, they keep more people employed, and they're able to service their customer locally. You know, and that's a big thing. You know, I find it amazing in this day of technology that when we get right down to picking our lender, almost the very next question is, where am I going to send my payment? Well, I can tell you this, it won't be to the guy who's got the cheapest price. Yeah, newsflash, everybody. I hate to break your bubble there, but that's how it works. So the reality of it is that I don't know if they're trying to protect Wells Fargo, Chase, Citi, those players, or do they want to get rid of the non-bank lenders? Because I do believe that in 2008 to 2010, when we started seeing this shift to non-bank lending, we saw that shift because the banks got out of lending and they stepped in and filled a void. And then they figured out, hey, if we service, we can make some money too. So they increase their capital requirements, apply it. I mean, do you know that when you apply now to Ginnie Mae for approval, it takes 18 months to get approved? That's the process. They are so backlogged. So the reality of it is, Ginnie stepped up. I have no doubt that they stepped up because their customer base is more at risk. They typically have the lower credit scores, the smallest down payments, VA does zero down. So those people are more at risk right now. And that's why they stepped up. They saw the problem. They stepped up because they want to protect the customer base that they have. They want to protect the lenders that participate in it. And they want to protect the process as it sits today. And I think that makes a lot of sense. FHFA should do the same thing. Because again, at the end of the day, I would like to point out, Fannie and Freddie approved all of these servicers. Nobody became a Fannie Freddie servicer without Fannie or Freddie approving them. Somebody gave the okay. Now, we have the FHFA, a government entity, who's basically taken the position that we are going to allow your portfolio to become worthless until somebody else can take it over, while we're still making loans and selling those loans in a portfolio that could virtually turn worthless. I mean, they're devaluating the same bonds that they're trying to create. It's interesting to me how all this works.
I'll tell you, Kevin and Rick, I have a feeling this isn't the last of this story. I think we're just starting to dive into it. A lot of great points there from both of you. Let's revisit this again. Now we're going to turn to marketing matters. After all, the show is produced by Content Beacon, so from time to time, I warned you all from the start that Rick and I might jump in and talk a little about marketing communications. And of course, Kevin, you are not blind to marketing. You have your share of experience as well. So let's talk a little today about the Corona quarantine and what that has meant for content. And again, that all-encompassing word that if you look it up, all content really means is stuff. But we're seeing a lot of content, and I'm going to go to our favorite social media platform, LinkedIn. It's definitely gotten a little busier out there on the superhighway, and I would actually say that LinkedIn has kind of become the new corner bar for Friday happy hour, and in some cases, literally. But we've got a lot of professionals trapped at home trying to escape from their homeschooling requirements or their grumpy spouses, and looks like a lot of folks are finding some use of that extra time in LinkedIn content. And we've got a lot of folks who normally don't do that, sharing articles, sharing links, making short videos or podcasts of their own, or even taking a stab at doing their own writing. And this is good, and this is also sometimes not so good. But this week this week we'll talk about the observation, and then next week Rick's going to take the lead here, and we're going to provide some very positive tips on how to make your own corner of LinkedIn a little better. I'm going to say this: it's a good thing for the mortgage industry, and it's supporting industries, title insurance and service providers and whatnot. It's a good thing because it looks like we're finally starting to understand that content, there we go, our first air quotes, content can be monetized. It does have a place in promoting a business and running a business. We use it to market, but content marketing can be used for internal communications. It can be used for client support. There's a lot of uses for content marketing that we're just scratching the surface on. That's a good thing that we're finally understanding that. It's good that folks are trying their hand at it. It sometimes has its repercussions, however, because some of the stuff I'm seeing out there is not really thought out. Sometimes it's just a little scattershot, and that's okay, I guess. Sometimes there's not a lot of consistency. That's to be expected. In some rare cases, there's a lack of restraint, and I've seen a couple of threads out there that look more like a Twitter conversation. I mean, I've been surprised. Not what you've come to expect from a professional place like LinkedIn. But again, it's good to see the boundaries being pushed a little bit. And the biggest effect is that rising flood of new content is probably drowning out a lot of the content you've come to expect and come to count on. So it's getting a little harder to wade through it all. I'd say this to folks out there, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys. This too will abate. This will pass, okay? I think content's here to stay, but the fact is at some point or another, a lot of these folks are going to be back on airplanes again. They're going to be back in meetings. They're not going to have time, energy, or the desire to write or do pods or whatever. A lot of the amateur content writers will soon be, they might just get tired of it. Rick will tell you, he was an editor for years. It is not easy to come up with a new story every week, much less every day, much less several of them. Creating content is a long-term proposition. So I don't think, though, that content's going away. I think it's going to get better mapped out, better organized, and just altogether better. And next week, we're going to talk a little bit about how we can do that. But right now, I'm going to let the peanut gallery in on this. Guys, what's good out there? What are you seeing? And I'm going to confine this to LinkedIn for now. But what are you seeing over the last 3 or 4 weeks that may be considered a positive result of the quarantine?
Right now, this market, the situation that we're incurring, couldn't be better suited for Content Beacon than any other time.
Oh, shucks.
Because there are lots of people out there putting out content. So you have the opportunity now to put your content out there, to be one of the voices, one of the many voices being heard. But it enables Content Beacon to show the level of professionalism that you can provide, the level of service that you can provide. And when things go back to normal, this is your normal. This is what you guys do. This is the reality of it. You don't have to be in a 50-story building on the 49th floor and have the whole floor to produce what you do. You produce it the way you produce it, and that's always been the way you've done it. So today, this is what Content Beacon is for. This is companies like yours, and as we say in the intro, it's the only B2B. This is where you shine. This is the opportunity where you have that chance to take that next step. And I believe that watching all the content out there is like take Rick back to his editor days. It's like, okay, guys, that's a good message, but you may not want to say it that way. Or, it gives you the opportunity to critique what people are doing, and then you're able to, from the old salesman standpoint, really speak to their need. And you already know what the need is because you watched that horrendous video. Or you might have seen something that was absolutely fantastic. And so it gives you something you can take to enhance your business. So I think the content out there right now, well, I'll agree, some of it is really kind of crazy. The fact of the matter is a company like Content Beacon right now could not have the stage set for them better than right now.
I'll tell you, Kevin, I think we're going to edit this and put you on the front end of the show, but thank you for your kind words. And I'm going to close by going to Rick, but I'm going to tease something for our next episode. We have a special guest coming. I'm not going to reveal the name yet until he's on here. He's actually going to be one of the examples of what we consider to be good content, and he's going to be a perfect guest for the next segment on this next time around. Kevin Breeland brought him to us, and hopefully we can make that happen. So we're going to give you an example of good content, and although we'd like to think that only Content Beacon can do it, there are some great examples, and we're going to give you one next week. So I'm going to end on this note with you, Mr. Grant. How about you give us a little teaser for the next time we do this? Where could the industry be a little more effective right now on LinkedIn?
Well, I think we're going to show them a number of places that they can do a little bit better with this network, but that's fine. That's fine, because what we've done is this crisis has forced executives who only used LinkedIn for a couple of reasons. Maybe they were recruiting, or maybe they were looking for somebody to sell to. Now it's become more of that corner bar that you described, Brian. People are coming here because they're desperate to interact with people that they used to be able to just fly to their office and take them out to lunch or to the golf course or whatever. And now they can't. And so we're seeing a lot of stuff on LinkedIn today that looks like Facebook. That's just a little, it almost blurs the lines a little bit and gets out of control. That's fine. That's fine. Because it's teaching these executives that this is a place they can come to share information. Then when things go back to normal, they're going to be busy, and we'll be able to say, look, they're not coming here as often. When they do, they really need to find something valuable, something that really hits them where they live. That's what we're going to talk about next week.
As always, Rick, well said. Gentlemen, Mr. Breeland, Mr. Grant, as always, thank you. But unfortunately, it looks like my DoorDash is here, and my old iPad can only handle one thing at a time. So, guys, I got to eat. Rick, I'll send some to you, and why don't you go ahead and take us home.
Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope you join us next time as well, when we're going to share some ideas for how to make your LinkedIn experience better, both for you, your company, and the people that you sell and support. Until next time, thanks for watching.